Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Wavemakers podcast, where we talk about the stories of the maritime decarbonization leaders, what it feels to be them and drive this transition. My guest today has worn pretty much every possible hat when it comes to innovation and decarbonization. His resume is basically a snapshot of all possible roles you can have, from research to consultancy to being the front runner and setting up research centers, working with authorities, and then paving the way for the whole industry. His latest role, I think, let him pretty much shape the maritime decarbonization for the world and leave such a big print on it as the former CTO and CSO of the Global Center for Maritime Decarbonization. And now he's stepping into a role of reflecting on his journey and guiding the next generations. With all of that, that would take me an hour to tell you about. He also found time to be a painter, a writer, a poet, and his first poem was about chicken rice. So today we will learn who is this passionate and purposeful leader behind all these titles. Please help me welcome Dr. Sanjay Kuttan.
Good morning, Kuttan. Thank you so much. Jeez, you did a lot of research.
A little bit. I've been following you, and I really love when you share your poems. I think that's very brave.
Thank you.
And I also interviewed others, and they recommended that I speak to you. And I'm so happy that the stars aligned and that we are here today. So, in your own words, beyond all these hats you wore over the past 33 years, how would you describe yourself?
I guess as an individual, I would describe myself in a way that I've always tried to be authentic, real to my own, who I want to be. So you get what you see, no matter which arena, whether it's at a pub or in church or in the park or in the office. I'm the same person. I have only one face, and I work very hard to make sure that people will always recognize me regardless where I am. So I try to be authentic all the time, so people know how to deal with me no matter the scenario.
I think that's very brave, and that's quite a role model for the rest, because especially when you work in, let's say, heavy asset industries, I think that's especially challenging. And over the past 33 years, I think the world has changed to become a little bit more open and empathic. But how do you see that changing? How do you see that path of kind of going through these different industries with the authentic self?
My last job together with GCMD, that was my 8th job. So I pivoted 7 times. I started off as a pharmacologist, and I did genetics research at the university, and then I pivoted into ExxonMobil to do field engineering. So I think with every pivot, I began to believe in myself, and I had the courage to try new things. So, every pivot was a very different job that I moved into, trying to leverage a bit of what I had, but also constantly trying to discover new boundaries for myself. It was always not an easy decision. Every pivot has not been an easy decision because I've always entered a new area. But I saw it as an exciting possibility of discovering myself and also learning. I love learning. I love learning new things. And that's also partly why I tend to pivot, because I reach a point of saturation and I want to wake up excited every morning to go to work. So even when I was with ExxonMobil for 12 years, which is my longest stint, I did 6 different jobs in ExxonMobil, which were very different. So I always want to constantly be on the edge and learning. I don't mind being at the bottom of the learning curve. I remember one of the interviews I had, my first interview with ExxonMobil before I got the job. And the hiring director said to me, he said, but you're not an engineer, you're a pharmacologist, what are you going to do in field engineering, which is, with engines and lubricants, which is tribology, this is like completely something you never studied. And then I said to him, I said, is it rocket science? And he said, what do you mean? I said, no, is it rocket science? Do you need to be a rocket scientist to learn all the stuff that you just mentioned? And he said, well, not really. He said, well, if it's not rocket science, I can learn it, So then I put in the effort to learn, right? But that gave me that sense of, if I really want to do it, I can do these pivots, And that since then every pivot has given me more and more confidence that I can take on new things, even though I don't have the degree or the qualification for it. So that's been my journey over the last 33 years, actually.
I'm sure that even when it came to rocket science, with that attitude, you would be able to take it up.
I don't know. I heard rocket science is a bit more complicated, the math at least.
But then you will leverage the other superpower, bringing communities together.
Sure. And now with computers and AI, maybe it's much easier. The gap is much slower, closer,
So then from that skepticism, you actually reached a point in your life when you were also setting up the Energy Research Center, right? What drove your curiosity when you were moving from oil and gas towards pretty much driving energy transition and decarbonization?
Yeah, I mean, let's put it this way. It wasn't a conscious choice. It was a conscious choice to leave oil and gas, but it wasn't a conscious choice to start working on something else to drive the energy transition. It was an opportunity that presented itself, right? When I was in university, the group of us were already quite conscious about climate change and things like that, So I was then heading up the postgraduate society in NUS. And we had this huge seminar on the ailing planet, which is really talking about climate change and sulfurification of the air, through emissions and things like that. So that consciousness was already burgeoning in my university days. But those days we were accused of Greenpeace wannabe, and but when I pivoted from ExxonMobil was not because I wanted to get involved with cleaner energy. It was I was tired. 12 years. I was not learning anymore. I had a disconnect with the value system of the organization. So I wanted something more true to myself. So, I applied for McKinsey and Company, and I got into McKinsey. And I love the consulting area. And in fact, I joined McKinsey consulting with the oil and gas industry, right? But I used that to try and make and address the issues that they had at the day. But I think the process of learning through tools and models that McKinsey is really good at was a great addition to my own capability. So I learned as much there as well. So every pivot happens to bring me closer to cleaner energy. Then after that, I went to the Energy Market Authority. And then when I was working at the Energy Market Authority, I had an opportunity to kickstart the electric vehicle program in Singapore, to kickstart the renewable installation at Pulau Ubin, and get into it smart grids and smart buildings, So, it just slightly, I guess, kept moving closer to cleaner stuff, after that I joined DNV, and then I was heading up the Clean Technology Center. So I slowly got into it by just, maybe by God's grace, or, that, the stars were aligned, that, this is where I would eventually end up in sustainability,
And a lot of that was also building in the environment where that was not that much knowledge about the topic.
Correct. It was really early days. And there was definitely an ambition and desire to make use of energy better. So energy efficiency was really big, and it should be, and it still is, but it was a desire to be better use of our resources, right? Energy efficiency is just not about decarb, right? It's about better uses of our resources, and I think that era was, really building, and technology was slowly catching up, and that this digital world started coming up, and Industry 4.0 started happening. So it really kind of drove that whole transition a lot faster.
And which of these did you enjoy the most?
Technically, I enjoyed all of them. I've enjoyed every part of my journey.
It was a right moment
right
for
moment,
you.
right time for me. No regrets. I've never regretted any move, and I've never regretted any move into, and I've never regretted any move out of. Right? Yeah. So I'm always looking forward to the next what I can contribute to the equation, what I can help. And I love working with the youth because they are also very hungry to do the right thing. I don't have that many platforms to work with younger people, but when it does happen, I'll always volunteer. I always love talking to young people and sharing my little bit of my perspective on how things should work.
I think they complement that drive into action and the new things and kind of like fast-paced process and progress. What do you think is your superpower?
My superpower?
Yes.
If I had to be completely honest, I think I'm religious. So I think my superpower has been always believing in God. No matter what happens, I will always be okay. And I think it's the patience in the faith and believing. So I think that assurance gives me my internal confidence that I can rise above anything. So the confidence doesn't come from my past, but I think comes from something greater than I am that gives me that ability to it's not that I don't get anxious. It's not that I don't get depressed or, it's not that, right? But that no matter whatever setbacks that you can get through this, and that keeps me focusing on forward rather than looking at backwards and saying, oh, should I have done this or should I made that decision? I'm thinking of what is the next decision I should be making that is the right decision. I always used to tell my team, we're trying to cater to all the different dynamics, and sometimes it's good to understand it, but your constant must be always, you must have a clear idea what is the right thing to do. Right? And then if you have that, you try and make that work as close as possible to making sure the right thing gets done. Right? And I think that's important. So it allows you to focus and never regret any decision because you know and believe that was the right thing to do.
I can very much relate to this because I use my emotions also as a compass. And I do some leaps because I also have pivoted, etc. But I do it when kind of internally I'm totally okay with that decision. It doesn't have to be rationally logical at all. But once I do that, then I know that my full self was in it and I never had regrets because I know that for my body, for my soul, that was the right decision and it took me to something else. And then whatever the process looked like, it was my learning journey. So then it's okay.
Right.
That was a part of my growth. But
right.
I can also relate to what you said, trusting in that cushion that no matter what happens, you will be fine. I mean, I come from Serbia. I grew up through the wars and we were fine. And my mom was telling me during that period also, many people lost jobs and she was walking oh my God, what will I do? I have this kid and the situation is getting crazy. And she said, as I was wandering down the street, thinking, how will I tell people and family? Someone walks out of a car. Yelena, I was just looking for you. And I need you. I have this job. I thought of you and I saw you. And she told me this story to think things somehow align. And just trust yourself and trust the process. And I think for me, at least, that was kind of why I was brave to also like switch countries and pivot and trust that inner compass.
Yes, yeah.
But maybe it just works out when we do that. And
Yeah. I know my friend Dinesh, a very close friend of mine, he wrote a book called Inner Alignment. And it's basically that whole concept. And once you're aligned internally, mind, spirit, and soul, you know exactly what you want to do with your life, then that gives you that ability to push through the hard times. Pushing through a good time is easy, right? But pushing through the hard times, that takes a lot of internal strength, right? And I don't think I'm there, but I believe if I keep focusing on making sure I don't create any dissonance in that inner alignment or that confidence or that belief, with everything I have. And that's why being authentic is important, right? Having only one face allows you to have that internal alignment, because otherwise you're grappling. Should I be person A, person B, person C? It becomes schizophrenic, right?
Yeah, I think that's exhausting. I would forget kind of like which role did I play, what happened. And I know that now with this conversation that you are someone who, you said, I think in one of the interviews, you're always aware of the surrounding and kind of sensing what is happening, but also that is where you draw your inspiration from and keep the nuggets, observations to then put it into poems that you write. Can you share a bit of that? How does that process work? Like with kind of doing roles professionally that often ask you to be very pragmatic.
If I reflect on the question and I reflect on my life, over, especially during my working life, I think it became very apparent in my early days when I started working. I would spend, when I finished the day, I would spend reflecting on the conversations I had, how I made people feel during those conversations, and I would always go back and apologize the next day to a person, which if I felt that my words weren't right. I always try to remember, what did I say to that person? How did that make the person feel? But when I started doing this, I found myself also reflecting on the day's work. What did I achieve? What went wrong? What I need to focus on? So I was taking a step back and breathing a bit, and just reflecting. And I think that consciousness kept feeding, that whole behavior of self-consciousness, and kept feeding on itself, that made me more and more conscious of the world that I operated in, right? So it's not just, it is the practicalities of work is also very important, right? To have that time to take a deep breath and say, okay, what happened today, and things. The challenge today is sometimes we don't have the time, we don't take the time, because we're constantly being connected. And the challenge is being connected with the external world constantly means we're sometimes disconnecting out from ourselves, which is far more important to be connected to if we want to start understanding ourselves, to push ourselves through difficulties and new boundaries. So we need to always remember to connect to ourselves. And I think poetry allows me to do that, because I'm forcing myself to reflect on the world I've seen, the sounds that I hear, the words that other people uses, the visuals I see on TV. I mean, I've written poems watching a movie. Then suddenly I realized that means so much. I've now forgotten about the movie. I might be still staring at it, but my mind is now in a different world, trying to write a poem about that moment that the movie showed.
Yeah. Yes, your inner self is calling you for a debrief.
Yeah, exactly.
I too write poems, but
Oh,
I'm not brave like you to let them out into the
well,
world. Some have been out by my former professors, but I also find it as, and I don't do it, I think, as often. Like they kind of exist somewhere, eventually find their way. But I found that that is a way of me communicating to myself, because, as you said, like you start doing something, the message pops out, drives you, do this and do this, and it's so easy to get diluted in all these external wants.
yes,
And especially if you try to be there for others, and like if communities are important, then that's especially difficult, I think. And it's so good to have something that, like, bodies are so smart, they always find a channel, like,
yeah, yeah.
okay, the emotion thing, okay, come back, the inspiration, come back. Okay, so now kind of taking the journey and yeah, like let's say we are entering a port and you see many different ships. And which one would be you? Which ship would be yourself?
Ooh, that's an interesting question. God. I would be the tugboat.
Hmm.
I would be the tugboat. That would be, I mean, that's the first boat that came into my mind as I was reflecting on your question. It's there, it makes sure things happen safely. It has more power in it than people imagine it to be, because it's a small vessel. But it's so super important. It has a role. And it's a role that's always hidden, it's not, people don't talk about it, right? I'm not big for limelights or, things like that, but personally, I want to get stuff done. And if I can enable it, and, and the 24,000 TU gets all the credit, fine, right? But, if I was the little tugboat that pushed it along in its safe journey into port, out of the port, into the berth, right? I would be a happy camper, right? So, yeah, so maybe I'm the tugboat.
It really resonates well with what we shared, because they're so nimble, right? So you can learn how maneuver.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
get the job done.
It's got speed and it's got power, right?
Yes, I find them very impressive. I don't know how these little boats can move so much, but yeah. Okay, and when you now reflect back, and you said you really like working with younger people, what would be your advice to someone who's totally new and wants to do something, let's say in maritime decarbonization industry, how to map their journey and find themselves in it?
Yeah. So I mean, the first thing is to ask yourself, what's your motivation, right? The challenge always is buzzwords and getting caught up, right? So I think being very clear in understanding yourself, because the maritime sector has so much to offer. There's so many different parts that one can contribute to the maritime sector, right? So before you go and decide which door to open in the maritime sector, I think it's really understanding yourself first, and why you want to do what you want to do. Because the journey is not going to be all smooth sailing, right? You're going to go through storms. So that inner alignment and understanding yourself is going to be important. And I think for a young person to have that level of maturity and consciousness to understand themselves is also a bit ask, right? So you can't expect that. But I think the journey must begin from there, right? That you begin to put in place the ability to learn about yourself as much as you're going to learn about the environment that you're going to be operating in. Once you understand your strengths and your passion, be it law or be it operations or be it digitalization or be it data or be it working with the crew, providing safety protocols, or even a listening ear, like the missions of seafarers, right? What is it that energizes you as a person, and then understanding that will then allow you to choose the plethora of work that's out there that supports the maritime industry. There is no bigger job than another job. All these jobs are important. If they're not important, they won't exist. They will be naturally carved away or made redundant. But they exist because they're like a huge jigsaw puzzle, right? Every piece is going to be important to make maritime work. So you got to decide which piece you want to be, right? And sometimes we need to be honest with ourselves. Is it status I'm looking for? Is it money I'm looking for? And if you're not honest with yourself, then you have a dissonance with your inner alignment, right? Because you want to look good, but actually you're actually motivated by something else, right? So being true to yourself, right? And every job I took in my 7 pivots, I always took a pay cut. It was more important for me to enter something that I was going to be excited, because I always know that eventually the money will come, right? But the opportunity is very rare that the window opens, right? So I think knowing that what really is important for you, right? If money is important, there's no shame in that. But it's to be honest with yourself. Then you choose the right job to make sure that it satisfies that internal honesty.
And maritime industry is really very diverse, and
it is.
There's a spot for everyone, but it's also, as you mentioned, intense. And I can only imagine that if you're not fully in there, like it can really run you down very quickly, because it never stops. It's very global.
Yeah.
And I think that pace, although people think it's very slow, but actually in the background, things are moving everywhere all the time. And that pace can really make you face your own self quickly. But that's the beauty of it, because it kind of takes you to who you are and what you believe and stand for
Exactly.
so fast. So, and now that, let's say, you have been quite an instrumental part, I believe, in shaping the maritime decarbonization for the industry, with driving many initial pilots and setting it from 0 to 1. How do you see it shaping towards 2050?
It's tough. I don't think, I think I like, there's this whole idea of SMART goals, and I like big, hairy, audacious goals. I like being stretched. I remember I had a team in DNV, and there was a fallout number, and in the end we had to grow the business by 700%. And my whole team was like, "Come on, boss, it's gonna be impossible." I said, "Yeah, but you know what it makes us begin to do? It helps us start thinking out of the box. If we really want to get to 700%, what do we need to do differently? If we had a SMART goal that is achievable, blah, 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 and everything, it could be business as usual, right? But big, hairy, audacious goals makes us rethink how we do things. And I think that's IMO's 2050 target is not a SMART goal. It's a big, hairy, audacious goal, which is going to demand the industry to think differently if we're going to achieve this goal, right? And that is very important, because we're not changing or decarbonizing because we want to play with the next clean widget or sexy toy or whatever it is. We're doing it because we're trying to address an existential threat, which means we live or die, So we have to start thinking differently. And I think these goals are important. I think it's going to be tough. And I'm quite sure we might not make it in 2050. But you know what? If we get to 80% or 90% of the goal, we would have done so much for the environment. All right. So I think we must have that mindset. I mean, all these years I've worked with different organizations. We were always hamstrung by KPIs. We always say, okay, what's my KPI? I need to do 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, whatever it is. And we're just focusing on that 5 or that 4 or that 3. And I mean, and I always remind myself and I remind my team, the I is not an imperative. The I is an indicator, right? That's the direction we want to go. So we should be pushing ourselves not to just achieve the 5, but can we make it 10? Right? And if we can't, it's okay. But if we rethink the way we do things, if we use innovation or we use different business models, we become, we open the fields, the solution field, and not get bogged down whether I'll get my bonus next year if I meet my KPI or not, right? We can change a lot faster. We are always hamstrung by these targets that are pulled out from don't know God knows where, right? Just to achieve something so that you can do some reporting to the stock market or whatever it is. But I think we shortchange human ingenuity by having that limit. If we wanted just to say, what can we do right and how can we do it best and how can we do it faster? And I mean,
yeah.
And then we start rethinking the way we do things. Otherwise, we'll just level to the lowest common denominator and we say, yeah, okay,
It's comfortable.
It's comfortable, right? I think being having a discomfort with the status quo is an important driver for change, right? And being comfortable being in a discomfort zone is a very important driver for change. And that's the way if we're going to fight this existential threat, we will need something like that. And we will need leaders who have the courage to believe that it can be done, to have the ability to inspire people who don't think that way to think that way, and to also make a decision when you're wrong, and move and pivot and change and explore, right? We are operating at the boundaries, at the frontiers, like Star Trek, right? To go where no man has gone or no woman has gone before, right? So what are the rules there, right? So we need to have the courage and the gumption to push through these barriers without needing to have all the facts. Sometimes we it's paralysis by analysis or not, you know what I mean? And you want a sure bet, and we're going into a zone where we are making rules, so there are no sure bets, right? So that journey has to envisage and recognize that we want step changes, but step changes come with risk, and risk has to be calculated, but it is going to be a risk. There's no sure thing,
I think that innovators don't get enough credit for doing that, right? Like,
exactly.
Kind of they start something where they have no guidance, no one has done it before, but then in today's world, everyone is pointing magnifying glasses, like how they are doing, what is he doing? But actually, it's that journey, even if it's a failure, that gave a piece of knowledge to the rest, so that we don't have to try and fail in 100 compartments in parallel, but actually that person took a risk so that others can learn from it. And then the 10th one will probably do it really well, right? But they're expecting the person number 1 to do it exactly like an engineer with a thick manual would do it, right?
Yeah. And it's when you use the word failure, I also ask myself, what is really the definition of failure, right? Failure is defined by a target that you wanted to go for.
Yeah.
Right? But the success is that journey to get to that point where you didn't make the target. that success is actually going to be the basis of the next person building on, like you just said. So is it truly a failure?
No.
Right?
Yeah.
You have succeeded in going to a space where no one has gone before and push the boundary further out. You may not have got to that final destination, but you've actually paved the way maybe halfway. Then someone builds from there and then closes that gap. So is it truly a failure? I don't think so. I think it's a perspective. It's a failure because we had this KPI.
Yeah.
Right? And whether it's the stock expectation or internal budget expectation, but that effort to go to the next journey is a success.
I also like viewing innovation as kind of a portfolio. Like you invest this project to learn so much more, and even like going to space, right? Okay, did you get to the moon or to Mars? But how about all these satellites that we now have that improve the life today that we have on Earth? So, and I love one of your quotes, how you wish that success is measured by the millions of hearts that we touch instead of the millions of dollars we make. And I think that is such a nice reflection also on how you try to do things as well. I also like to switch up the mics, and instead of me always asking questions, to allow you to ask questions to me as well. So do you have any questions?
Yeah, I mean, why are you doing this?
I think I just love people and their stories, and maybe it's that poet in me, but as I'm also like learning from reflections of myself, I was always really curious about others. And I was in such roles where I was kind of building communities or driving innovation by pulling partnerships and pulling communities and people together. And for me, it's been really important to understand who I'm dealing with. But that was kind of the initial part. But the second layer is like identifying similarities that help me work with different people or even understand where some resistance came from. And it's usually just kind of when you scrape this surface level of maybe this one is doing it for the KPI, like when you identify common values and see each other, that's when things move. That's when you or someone else feels the freedom to remove that hat and actually share what's bothering them, what's empowering them. And I think that is the essence of progress. When people feel seen and heard, then they have the power to push through the hardships because they know that they're not alone. So when it comes to driving maritime decarbonization, my hope is that so many others, hopefully, that are watching will recognize themselves in any of these stories and think that I too can be a part of this. I too can lead. These people who seem to be speaking on podiums or like silently researching actually are similar like me. And to try to remove the hierarchy and to drive progress by kind of sharing the commonalities that drive us as humans. So that is why.
No, it's a lovely effort. We need this more today than we ever did, because especially the younger generation, they're getting tugged in different directions, and they're carrying very different burdens. Everyone carries burden, whether you're rich or poor. It's different types of burdens, right?
Yeah.
So I think having these voices that you are making an effort to bring together and putting it out there and trying to help people make sense of the world they live in so that they can be more purposeful in their journey is really admirable. I mean, I think it's and technology is allowing us to do this, right?
Yeah.
Is leveraging the technology to be able to do something like this. If we go back 30 years, it's not as if 30 years ago this issue never existed. It's always existed. This is part of humanity, right? But today, to have the technology to actually then make an impact and leverage that technology, right, is what we should be thinking about. How do we actually use innovation and technology to deliver some of these, insights and opportunities for people? No, it's really great.
Thank you. And it was never more affordable. It's so easy. Before, maybe you would see someone on TV, but you don't know what you're experiencing is kind of like typical or not, or maybe you have some inspiration, but you're not brave. But I hope that when people hear these stories, they know, actually, Sanjay has experienced it. This is normal. I can do this. Like, it's okay. I will not know, but I can learn. Right. And hopefully learning snippets of that from different backgrounds will encourage others to persist in the pursuit of driving something new, whether that's now hopefully maritime decarbonization or just something totally different.
Absolutely.
Instead of thinking that they're not worthy of it as well. The journey is quite fruitful and the experience is fun.
So I can understand where your energy comes from. What are your red hot buttons? What de-energizes you?
When I'm away from my values, and that's interesting because sometimes you also need to put boundaries to other people, right? And I tend to be someone who wants to kind of please others and be there for everyone, but not everyone has a good intention in this. So recognizing when I'm driven by that, or even when like others' expectations, commercial expectations, for example, are driving me away from what I feel is my value. And like, I'm someone I've been in sustainability my whole life. That's all I wanted to do since I was young, right? So it's okay, understanding whether I'm choosing some shortcuts because someone else is expecting me to, whereas what I really want to drive is this. So things like that. And in day-to-day life, one of the things I really hate, breaking deadlines. Like, for me, and it's an interesting one because maybe it's telling me something about myself, but I really don't like going over the deadlines, or when we agree that project will be done at this point, it should be done, or like there should be communication if things are not going in the right direction. So I don't like arriving at this destination where things are not as agreed, or if there was no communication along the way. These are the buttons.
Right. So do you have a comfort food?
I really like frozen berries, frozen ice creams, stuff like that. But I'm quite a healthy eater, and I've been like vegetarian pretty much my whole life, almost since I was 9, and later vegan. So I'm quite, I think, healthy, but I love fruits and lots of that.
Nice.
How about you? What's your favorite food?
My favorite food is actually my wife is a great cook, and she knows every time she sees that I'm like, maybe the work is getting to me or something is getting to, she'll always make my favorite green chili chicken curry with a yogurt based vegetable, and that I could eat that every day, really. So even my domestic help is like, sir, you're eating this 3 days in a row. So yeah, but I love it. So actually for me, it's my wife's cooking. I really love, and especially some dishes. It's really, that's my comfort food. As you can see, I'm not so weight conscious. I'm working on getting healthier for sure.
You're just enjoying
life. I'm just enjoying life, because I went through a major operation and I was fighting to stay alive. And that really gave me time to reflect on what's important and what's not important. So I try to, it's not to live dangerously or irresponsibly, but remember that life is fragile and you really need to at least enjoy it, and have fun and leave something behind that will live after you, that people will either enjoy or respect or be thankful for, rather.
Savor the moments.
Savor the moment, Yeah.
Well, your wife is also an award-winning chef, so
I don't know about award-winning, but she's a great chef. I mean, she's won all our awards at home and friends, So it's her passion, She's been doing this for so many years, but only now, because of her recent retrenchment, she's really now got into it. You know what I mean? As a business, But prior to that, I mean, I think she's got more than 500 cookbooks at home, and she's read everything from everything, and she cooks any cuisine. The only one she struggles with, I would say, is Japanese, because you need a very different skill to do sashimi and sushis and things like that. But other than that, she's like, she really, I think she's energized. She when she's tired, she cooks, and she's not tired anymore, that kind of thing.
Well, that is also a signal of what we are meant to do, right? When it's recharging us.
Exactly, right? It charges us rather than discharges.
Yes. Well, since we started talking about lunch topics, I think it's almost the time to think about that. So I will thank you so much for being a part of this and sharing this conversation.
No, thank you so much. I really enjoyed this, actually.
I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, people usually... when we finish the session, they're like, this flew by.
Yeah.
And I learned so much from all these conversations. I also realized they become my steering wheel as well. Right. I think we are brought together with people at the right time. So thank you so much once again. And I hope we get a chance for more of these.
Thank you, and you're welcome.